Our Old Testament reading is Genesis 12, 1 through 9. Hear the word of the Lord. Now the Lord had said unto Abram, Get thee out of thy country, and from thy kindred, and from thy father's house, unto a land that I will show thee. And I will make of thee a great nation, and I will bless thee, and make thy name great, and thou shalt be a blessing. And I will bless them that bless thee, and curse him that curseth thee. And in thee shall all families of the earth be blessed. So Abram departed, as the Lord had spoken unto him, and Lot went with him. And Abram was 75 years old when he departed out of Haran. And Abram took Sarai, his wife, and Lot his brother's son, and all their substance that they had gathered, and the souls that they had gotten in Haran, and they went forth to go into the land of Canaan. And into the land of Canaan they came. And Abram passed through the land unto the place of Sichem, unto the plain of Moreh. And the Canaanite was then in the land. And the Lord appeared unto Abram and said, Unto thy seed will I give this land. And there builded he an altar unto the Lord, who appeared unto him. And he removed from thence unto a mountain on the east of Bethel, and pitched his tent, having Bethel on the west, and high on the east. And there he builded an altar unto the Lord, and called upon the name of the Lord. And Abram journeyed, going on still toward the south. The word of the Lord. Thanks be to God.
The psalmist wrote that happy is the nation whose God is the Lord, the people whom God has chosen as his heritage. And today what we're doing is we're moving from the story of the flood, where God blesses the whole world, where God promises never to destroy the world, promises always to be merciful to the whole world. And we're focusing in on one family in that world, focusing on Abram, as he was then, and Sarai. And this is a family that he says will become a great nation and will bless through this family all the nation, all the people of the world.
God promises Abram everything that's needed to become a great nation. Land, security, prosperity, and prominence. These are all things that we humans crave. And all Abram has to do is leave home and travel blindly to a place God will lead him to. Leave family and security and the life that he knows.
So we don't know exactly when Abram lived. We don't have any direct evidence. There's no archaeological evidence that specifically points to someone named Abram. We do know, the best estimate is that he was living about 4,000 years ago. So 2,000 years before Christ. Now at this time, this is actually known as the New Stone Age. So think stone tools, but not living in a cave. Stone tools and a tent. So a little past the caveman kind of image that we have of Stone Age, but still very, very primitive in terms of what people had and how they lived. There were already people, when they say in the Bible that the Canaanites were there when Abram came down. There was a migration path from Syria south down into Palestine, which is the path that's described that they take. And been there for quite a while. It was a big migration path for people, not for birds, not for animals, but for people. Probably for birds and animals too. But there was already a lot of people there already when God called him into this land. So that's plenty.
But what did it mean to be a nation in the New Stone Age? There was no Wall Street, no automated industry, no chemical pollution, no floating island of plastic in the ocean, no president or Congress, no TV or internet connecting everyone. But there were people, as Mary said, People were the one thing you must have to be a nation.
So last week, God promised to show mercy, to never again destroy the world. That's what the rainbow meant, right? So we remember that. That's what the rainbow meant, God's promises. But people, if you'll remember, Charlie said that was very one-sided. People didn't promise anything. People didn't even acknowledge that they needed to be better. But there was no promise on the part of people to be any better. God recognized that we were imperfect, that we were always going to need mercy and forgiveness, and God made that decision to show it always.
Abram and Sarah were no different. They weren't perfect either. In fact, they were probably quite ordinary in many ways. Their lives up to this point didn't include anything that especially sets them apart. At the end of chapter 11, we read about Abram's father, Terah, a descendant of Noah's son, Shem, who moved to Haran with his eldest son, Abram, Abram's wife, and Haran's grandson, Lot, whose father had died.
The only other thing we learn about them is that Sarah is barren. She can't have children. So think about that, what that means. It's a sad thing for any woman who wants to have children. But if God has just said, you're going to be a great nation, you're not going to be a great nation if you can't have any children. That's the one thing that you have to have a nation as people. So that's the one thing that really kind of puts a fly in it, worse than a fly. So the thing about this story, and Walter Brueggemann is the one I was reading that really brought this home to me. When we look at Sarah and her barrenness, it's sort of a parallel with the people in the flood story who couldn't make themselves perfect, who needed God's mercy and forgiving. We always need God for every step of the way. And the only way that Abram and Sarah can become a great nation, even if they were to amass wealth and wonderful security and all those other things, is if God steps in.
But in today's story, God promises to make their family a nation. The Lord said, God is speaking a word back into creation to change these hopeless lives, to give them a future, and to create a great nation through which the world will be blessed.
God gives them a command. A command. I'm sorry. I blew that one.
Yeah.
God gives them a promise, not a command. Right. Sorry. I do need the glasses. So, the thing that's acknowledging is that we always have free will. They could have decided to not go, and they might have just died childless in the city they were in. But they did choose to take him up on that. So the first call that was God's call, first time God speaks into our world, was to create the world. And the second time that God calls into the world, God's calling us to be a community, calling us to join with God and with God's people and become a nation, become a community.
In the same way, when Jesus calls his disciples, it's a promise, not a command. Jesus told his disciples, if any want to become my followers, let them deny themselves and take up their cross and follow me. For those who want to save their life will lose it. And those who lose their life for my sake will find it. That is Matthew 16:24 through 25. Are we willing to leave behind the lives that hold no future for us, to follow wherever God leads us? What does it look like in today's world to live in God's world, with God and God's people? How does God call us today?
Brueggemann describes this call into community as a call for abandonment, to abandon a world that's without God, for us to abandon that world. It's a call to renunciation, to renounce the values of that world without God. And it's a call for relinquishing all the things, letting go of all the things that come between us and God. God invites us in to be a part of that community. So the question is, how does God call us? And I found something in Psalms this morning. Psalm 19 begins this way. The heavens are telling the glory of God, and the firmament proclaims his handiwork. Day to day pours forth speech, and night to night declares knowledge. Now listen to this part. There is no speech, nor are there words. Their voice is not heard. Yet their voice goes out through all the earth, and their words to the end of the world. Sometimes I think we lose the poetry of the Bible when we start to hear it too literally. To think, God talks a lot in the Old Testament to people, and we picture, because as young people we had pictures of God in our Bibles, or at least of Moses, who I always thought was God in the Bible. We have somebody with a megaphone up there shouting down to something. God does speak to us through words, but the question is how we get those words. If you think about the people 4,000 years ago, their understanding of the universe was very different, and they also lived in a world that was, at night, very dark. There was no light pollution, so at night, if they looked up, they could see every shooting star, every comet that went by. And these were huge things for these people, that they would understand in ways. And I'm not just here to say that they saw something and they made something out of it that God didn't intend. But if you've ever had a thought that moved you to action, if you've ever had a dream where you woke up and it meant something to you, and then you think about having that kind of a dream, or that kind of a feeling, and then seeing a shooting star, you can understand how they felt like God was speaking to them, how they heard God's words through those things. So how does God speak to us today? Well, I always think of, and everybody knows me, sick of the story, but it's said that Joan of Arc was asked, how do you know that the voice that you hear is God's voice? Don't you just think it's maybe your imagination? And she laughed and said, well, of course it's my imagination. How else would God speak to me? I think, I used to have dreams, and a lot of you have heard this story too. I used to have dreams about being back at school. I had those dreams, and we weren't stress dreams. I was happy, I was back at school, this was really cool. I realized halfway through the dream that we were 3 weeks into the semester and I still didn't know what classes I was taking, but it didn't really bother me. But I enjoyed school. Never thought much about it. I'm 35, 40 years old when I'm having these dreams. So I knew a woman when I was in Kerrville who said to me out of the blue one day, you should go to seminary and be a pastor. And I said, why would I do that? There's no way I'm going to do that. I'm happily retired. I don't want to go back to school. And she said, no. I dreamed that you moved to Austin, but it was okay because you were going to go to seminary. And I said, really? And she said, I dreamed it twice. And all I could think was, why did God not send that dream to me? Because God was sending me those dreams and I was not paying any attention.
Yeah.
So we do have ways that God speaks to us, and the trick is to determine when it's God and when it isn't.
If you've ever been overcome with a feeling or an image or a thought that moved you to action, it could be God speaking to you. The Spirit moves us in strange and wonderful ways. Though I say it could be God speaking to you, because not every feeling or image or thought we have necessarily comes from God. God can speak to us in dreams, night dreams, as well as daydreams. Another way that God speaks to us is through other people, as Mary said. Good people in our lives, people of integrity. And finally, a big way that God speaks to us is through Scripture.
Which leads us to our second reading from the last chapter of Matthew, beginning at verse 16. Now the 11 disciples went to Galilee, to the mountain which Jesus had directed them. When they saw him, they worshipped him, but some doubted. And Jesus came and said to them, all authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Go therefore and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, and teaching them to obey everything that I have commanded you. And remember, I am with you always to the end of the age. The word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God. Remembering that none of us is perfect, even some of Jesus' own disciples in this passage doubted, but that Jesus' call to us is a promise. How does it change how we hear this passage? Like Abram, we're called to follow wherever Jesus might lead us. Though for some of us, that may only be out into our own neighborhoods, while for others, it may be halfway around the world. Like Abram's nation, we're being formed into a human community that leaves behind our lives without God. We're being asked to embrace a new hope-filled life with God and share that life, that vision of hope in our loving God, so that it blesses all the families of the world. And the promise that Jesus makes is that he will be with us always. So how shall we answer him?
God is good.
All the time.
All the time.
God